Well, welcome. We're going to just keep things moving, and my job is to just ask a bunch of curious questions so that these folks can tell their stories, which these are significant stories. And so, Andre, let's start at the beginning, because I think one of the beautiful things that I see happening with you and with TCDC and really everything that's happening here is that there is a growing interest, and we'll come back to this idea of momentum, but that means people are coming in at different parts of the story. And I think your story is so important. Would you take us back to the beginning and catch us up, just in case someone needs to be reminded of some of that?
Sure. So for me, people ask you what you want to be when you grow up and all that good stuff. Let's just say none of this was part of that plan. In fact, I went to school to be an engineer. I have an engineering degree. I love that. I told my dad I wanted to be an engineer because I did not want to deal with people. And here I am in the people business. I'll just say God has a sense of humor. And was traveling down the corporate America road, was enjoying the work that I was doing, but it really wasn't totally fulfilling for me. And so had an opportunity to make a shift, to make a pivot and enter into nonprofit space. And I worked for a nonprofit helping homeless vets. And I said, man, I really enjoy this. This is fulfilling for me. And so at the same time as I'm doing that, I'm in seminary. I graduated from seminary. It was kind of like, what next? And the what next ended up being planning a church, which again was not a part of the plan. Me and my dad had a running joke when he was alive. He would say, son, the time that I worked overtime to help you pay for that degree, I hope you plan to use it one day in your life. And I would say, I'll get around to that. And now I'm around to it because what we get to do is help build buildings, but most importantly, help build people. So it was a journey to get here.
Yeah.
Very unscripted, but I love it.
Yeah. So when you say engineer, though, I've asked you this before. My friends who are engineers see things differently. Like they can just see how things fit and how they work. And they can kind of they just look at a situation and go, okay, this is how all this is going to connect. Way better than some other folks can imagine that. And so I do see that happening. And I do see you using those gifts and that training. But if we're going to be really honest here, one of the questions that I've heard you answer over and over again is, okay, why right here? Because if you're looking and putting all of the pieces together, long before this was here, why right here?
Yeah, great question. So most times when I answer that, I do drive people crazy because the engineer in me is very visual, but very practical and structural. So people want me to either dream or they want me to be practical. They don't like both. But that's who I am. And for us, and for me personally, this area is more than just its history. Mm-hmm. I mean, the history of Jeff Vanderloo DeVille, Greaterville is amazing.
Right.
You have amazing people who have lived here. But then it gets personal because, my wife lived 2 blocks from here. She went to Farragut Elementary School. She lived and walked around here. I exist because my parents are from this neighborhood. They met here and eventually got married. So without this neighborhood, there's no me. Mm. So it goes beyond just the history. It goes beyond just being the place where, there's some open space. There are people here that have known me before I've known myself. And to be able to pull back and give back to them the way that they gave to me as a child is the why.
It's personal.
It's personal.
It's really personal.
Yes.
And it doesn't take very long in talking with you to sense that, whether it's the hopes and the dreams or whether it's the injustices, it's personal for you. Okay, so take us now to, here's a newsflash, the last 2 years have been quite a ride. And there have been a lot of changes, and there even some of the things that have happened here, there have been some changes. Tell us what's happening now.
Yeah, so, everybody's been on I don't even know what we call it anymore. We've been on something, right? And for us, you know, this building you're sitting in happened in the middle of all of that. And in the midst of building all of this, we also met new families. So we've had new families enter our neighborhood, enter our housing, become a part of not just our church, but a part of our community. We have leased this place up since the last time. So when we got together here last year, it was the first time being in this building, and we had got occupancy at 10 o'clock that morning. So I remember you asked me the question. You said, how's it going getting this place together? I said, at 10 o'clock, we got approval to be here. And in our minds, we said, okay, we've got time. So in this year that has gone by, now this place is fully maxed out. We gave up a supply room for a new partner that we'll get into with later. So we've added more housing for people. We have utilized our food pantry and emptied it out, helping people in the midst of food insecurity.
And when you say it's fully maxed out and you have tenants here, just talk a little bit more about really the business plan and why that's important.
Yeah, so for us, we knew that, we wanted to have services close to where people could walk and connect, but we also needed a revenue stream to help pay for this. And so the beauty of people being here is they help people, and then they help us help people by the revenue streams from rental income in this place. So you have Mercy, you have Catholic Charities and Pathways to Progress, you have Maryville University and the Walker Scottish Rite Clinic, you have Holland Law Firm, you have the Ashery Foundation, you have Good Shepherd Children and Family Services, and soon, as of Monday, you'll have First Bank. So all of those entities play a special role in helping people in this neighborhood, and also help us help people by allowing us to cover overhead and have a little room, if you will, to continue serving people with housing and other things that we do.
Right, so you can see why he was led to call this place the Hub, because it really has become a hub of life change and really, I think, community transformation. Andre, I think that's what's happening here. And this has become a hub where like-minded partners are coming together and saying, let's get this done. Which, to go back to your point about changing lives, means that there's stories flying all over the place. So I'm going to let you off the hook now, and I'm going to ask Shakara to come up here and talk with us if she could. There she is. And really just tell us some stories if we could. And so would you all please welcome Shakara, I want to say Green, right? Shakara Green. Thank you for doing this.
I'm getting both of them.
Okay, all right, okay. This will be easy, I promise. I promise.
The last time.
Well, so thanks for being here. Will you, it's a little bit of what we said with Andre, because some people know your story and some people don't. So can we start a little bit early and just tell us?
Sure. First, my name is Shakara, for everybody. Hello. I am a single mother of 4 beautiful children. They are my life. It all started when I had my 4th child. He immediately had to have open heart surgery. Me being a mother, I'm not going to leave my child's side. So missing work, eventually, got laid off because I missed too many days. He ended up having 3 open heart surgeries within the first 2 weeks of his life. Many times it was like, Mom, he's not going to make it. But, God answers prayers. And also during that time, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. So not taking care of myself, trying to take care of kids. Just got sick and, lost income, lost housing. I had to let my children go to Arkansas for a summer so I can kind of get back on my feet. They went to my mom and my grandmother. I went to St. Patrick's Center. Y'all, excuse me. And I seen a flyer for ARP, and it was really my last bit of hope. I had found a job working at a daycare. I was only making $50 a day, and I was working 12 hours a day there. It was really my last hope. Filled out the application, got the call for the interview. And during the interview, they was like, oh, we'll let you know, we'll call you. I think it was like the next day or two. Thank you. It was like the next day or two, Pastor Andre called us like, we're not going to make you wait. You got the house. It's yours. Go get your kids. This is home. I've always been a hands-on type of mother. I went to college with my older 2 kids on my hips. I was determined. So to bring them back home and have all of us together again, and I was only separated from them for 2 months, that was just a blessing. Continuing on, Mr. Ron, who's no longer with us, every 2 weeks was knocking on my door. Financial literacy, what I needed, what the kids needed, job placement, everything that I could have asked for and needed the willpower to do, they helped do. I could not be here today. Without them, my children wouldn't be in the place that they're in right now. They're happy, healthy. They love our church. They love our community. They love Pastor Andre and Lady Tiff, Alicia. They welcome them and they make them feel like family, and they make me feel like family. So it's a big deal for us. Going forward now, it's only up from here. It's only up from here.
So every time you tell this story,
I tear.
and me too, because there's such hope that's just in your story, your dedication, your drive, your willingness to link arms with Pastor Andre and TCDC, and it is a beautiful, beautiful example of what I think. Okay, so you brought up God. I'm going to sound like a pastor for a second.
Go right ahead.
But I think this is what God wants in our city and in this community. So what would you say to someone who's going, well, give me some nuts and bolts here. Why is Tabernacle Community Development Corporation, why is this so important to this part of North City?
So one thing that they do when they do our family plan, and everybody coming into the program has to do like a family plan, and they work on 5 major goals that you want to start and complete while you're here in the program. Your spiritual walk, it can be financial, it can be job, it can be starting a career, anything like that, anything that you have in your mind that you feel like you want to do, they want you to put in that family plan. Mine has always been, I want my spiritual walk to be always on point with God first. Because I know if that's on point for me, this can't be for anybody else, but for me, I know everything else will fall into place. So I always try to make sure that I'm staying linked up with my church, making sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, not only as a member, but as a Christian on this walk. Making sure that I'm putting those life skills into my children. I have a child that's a junior. He'll be leaving for college pretty soon. I want to make sure that I instill those values into him, so when he's away from me, he knows, okay, my mama taught me this, so I need to stay on track with certain things. And it's just, it's a building block. You have to have a foundation. My foundation, and for my children, my household, is Christ, is God. So that's where we started.
Any last word that you want to share with these folks about why this evening is so important? No, let me out of here, right? Is that it?
what you all contribute, it honestly changed lives. I can attest to that because it changed my life. Not only mine, but 4 other people, 4 little people whose hopes and dreams were almost crushed. And my kids are very active. My oldest plays the cello. He's been playing since he was 5. He dances, he sings. The 14-year-old, he plays football and also the drums. My daughter is in gymnastics. My baby boy loves the drums. Like, it's so much more than, somebody that doesn't want to work or, they just don't want to do anything. You actually have people out here with degrees that just fall on hard times. So your contributions, it changes lives. So if you don't take anything else from tonight, take that. Thank you.
And I will tell you, yes. I hope you're receiving that. I hope you'll let that just land in your heart, because I want to say for all of these people, thank you, because you're changing lives, and it's a privilege to just talk to you every time. So thank you. All right. Okay. So we're going to let her off the hook now. So. You have a heart for St. Louis. Thank you. And so I want us to talk for just a minute about your journey into a place where you wanted to be involved. So it could be, maybe you tell us a little bit about your journey in your legal career and how you and Andre found each other. Let's just start with those kinds of questions.
Sure, the legal part's easy. I've told you before that I've been incredibly blessed as the world measures it. But Amy and I, my wife, and I have had a real strong vision for work in St. Louis. The power of St. Louis, the people of St. Louis, the potential of St. Louis. So, once upon a time, back before COVID, there was a little event out at Rick Allen's Farm. And I think some of you folks were here. Shikara was not there, but I don't think. I'm trying to remember. But there were some stories. And man, oh man, we came out of there hot. We really did. And that really was, for me, the starting point of looking at TCDC and other organizations around town through the lens of what I refer to as the ecosystem, the holistic ecosystem. And it just got us on board to financially support the work here. That's where we first met. That's how we got connected.
So let's talk a little bit about ecosystem, because we were even discussing that earlier. When you say that, what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I hate to nerd out here, but the data doesn't lie. And, access to healthcare, legal services, banking services, food security, housing security, all lead to better outcomes for people. There's just no question about it. And so we're in on the ground floor on that. And we think that can be seen in the most successful places now throughout our state.
Okay. So fast forward a little bit, and now Holland Law is going to be really to have a presence in this ecosystem, in the hub. Tell us how you came to that conclusion and taking that step, and a little bit about why this is so important for this community.
Yeah, so Pastor Andre and I remember having a Zoom call and saying to him, boy, you guys are doing such great things, and you may think this is completely crazy. But what if I open the law office? And that triggered the conversation. That was really the start of the thing, and we just went after it. I think we looped even Randall and others in to the idea. We wanted to do it right, get it right, and so that's what we did.
Yeah. And you're here now. Tell us what you're providing here.
Yeah, so I would call it holistic legal services and connecting folks with available resources. And I have to introduce Shimon Lawrence, who's here, who is, please give her a round of applause. legal resources that are available. One of the issues with delivery of legal services in St. Louis, and I believe this is true in most places, we have a lot of really great organizations around town that provide certain silos of legal services. Those silos are autonomous, those silos report to their own boards, those silos don't collaborate really well. I think Shimon has been amazing at making a number of connections, encouraging there to be dialogue, making sure that we fan out to the right spots or try to. But the reality is there are gaps. So we have relationships with a number of really good organizations. We're all working and striving to do better. And that's exactly what we do here every day. We have a weekly call where we go through the current cases, the current intakes, the current folks coming in, and figure out what the best solutions are. And it's just a lot of problem solving.
Yeah, and is it fair to say that without a legal expert, some folks, there's a paralysis that can set in because they don't know how to navigate it. None of us know how to navigate the system without expert help.
Absolutely, and you know, that's true of virtually any area you can talk about that people come into contact with the legal system through, whether it be a threatening letter from a creditor or a landlord or a utility company, whether it's a old warrant that didn't get taken off like someone said it was taken off, all the different cascading issues that can come along, and those have to be dealt with.
Is there anything that you would say to anyone here? By the way, all of these folks are going to be available to talk afterwards if you have questions and you want to know how to just come alongside them. But is there anything else you would tell to folks here that are really taking a look at TCDC and trying to understand the impact this ecosystem is having?
Well, it's changing lives. I mean, you've already heard it a couple of times, and I think the idea of hope is the big idea. It's the big takeaway from tonight. That this is a place of hope. This is a place that's building up the community, and it's just something really special.
Yeah, well, thank you for being a part of this. Thank you for what's happening. Thank you for leading the way for us. And would you all thank Eric and his team now for being a part of it. We're going to keep moving because we just want to give you tastes of what's going on. Any of these guests could settle in and tell you an hour's worth of stories. But we thought it'd be better to just give you a taste of what's going on, which means I want to introduce our next guest, Rick Sems, who is he's the Chief Banking Officer for First Bank. And you just heard, we've got a celebration to have here this coming Monday. But if you would welcome Rick, I'm going to ask him some questions. Pretty similar.
Yeah.
So Rick, I think Eric kind of set the table for us.
Well, I think everybody kind of set the table.
This
There's nothing really more for me
ecosystem.
to say. Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you about why, so the data doesn't lie,
Yeah.
and the stories are true, and we're seeing that happen. But there is something that you felt First Bank could bring into this ecosystem to help in even more specific ways. Talk to us about that.
Sure. So I actually, Pastor Anthony Myers at the Crossing was talking a little bit about this. And my background, so I'm a capitalist, right? I think that's how we are. And when I was in college, actually, Tony Campolo would come every year, and Tony would always advocate for government solutions, actually. And I always thought, that's not the right answer. You know, the capitalism, quite frankly, needs to solve some of these. And so fast forward how many ever years later, and Anthony was talking about what they were doing here. And it just was like, this is exactly the right thing. They're taking, so as Pastor Andre was talking about, like, I like paying rent here. I'm glad I get to pay rent because that goes into the community here. It helps this become sustainable. And then as a result of it, the folks in the community, they use our services, they use other services that are here. And so it's sustainable then. And so that's a really, when you see that model and the fact that Pastor Andre is an engineer, which I love. I love the fact that he's an engineer and a pastor. That's a great combination. And so there was just a lot of thought to it. I thought this is exactly what we need to be part of because banking in economically disadvantaged areas is really challenging because people put a branch somewhere and they spend a lot of money on it, and then maybe the community doesn't accept it. And so, especially in the minority community, there historically been an aspect of underbanking, and there's just not the trust in the system. And so when you're able to come in and partner with somebody and basically say, we're going to be here for the long term, we want to be part of your community, it really gives an opportunity for that community and the neighbors to benefit from that and us to benefit from that. And so when I heard about this, I thought this is exactly the opportunity to be part of it, because if you do this well, then somebody else will do it. And we want somebody to copy us. We want somebody else to do this someplace else.
Right. There is not a zero-sum game mentality to this. This isn't, we want to corner the market on something. We want this to be replicated even throughout St. Louis.
Exactly.
So you mentioned benefits, though. Give us some like nuts and bolts. What are some of the benefits to this? Because I think when we talk about, okay, legal services, we talk about food scarcity, we talk about housing, I think everybody goes, got it.
Yeah.
But it's possible that somebody goes, I don't see how the banking component is just so important to this ecosystem. Will you just explain it to us at a level that we can all understand?
So I have a bunch of kids, and so one of the things we talk a lot about is financial literacy. And so that's, it's actually pretty interesting is that, each generation actually seems to know less about financial literacy than the one before. And there's this compounding interest, which as soon as you learn about compounding interest, you say, I want to be a capitalist. I want to put money into a bank or invest in things. And so there was a little girl over there. Is she down there? I was thinking, okay, so if somebody took $5 a day, and she started right now $5 a day, do you know how much money she'd have when she was 65 years old? It'd be like $3.5 million. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so this aspect of it's just a little, and you start in there. So the benefit to a lot of the communities, there's so many people that are unbanked, and they're, the money's in the payday lenders. There's just hard money lending it's high rates in there. And so the opportunity to basically start young and to start learning some of these financial principles, which is one of the aspects we're going to do. That I really love that Pastor Andre he wanted that. He wanted, so we're doing a lot of classes along those lines and bringing that into the community. And so that aspect of being able to, come put your money into a bank, have it be safe, and to let it grow over time allows you to have, to break cycles. To have other money to invest in, to have money to put back into the community, to put back into your church, to put back into businesses, just all kinds of great things.
And this becomes, over time, a generational benefit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I love about this is that when we're talking about this specific topic, there is a generational aspect to this that when you talk about breaking cycles, now we start to see things echoing long past the time we're here on this earth.
That's right.
Which is really, really cool. And I'm so grateful that you're part of this. I'm excited that it's official on Monday. And if folks want to talk to you afterwards about this, I'm quite sure Rick will explain to you a little bit more about compound interest, if none of that made sense. So, but thank you so much for being here.
Thanks,
all right, thank you. All right, Pastor Andre, come back up here. I want to ask you a few questions. We said we were going to keep this thing moving. You mentioned it, so let's say it again. Some people love vision, and some people love how's it going to get done. And what I love about what's happening here, and we say it all the time, but this is no longer theory. This is no longer theory. Even last year, when it had barely opened, it wasn't theory, but we couldn't tell you that the tenants were going to be here. We couldn't tell you that all of this was going to work, that it has, but it is now happening. There's a reason that people in the media are really intrigued with what's happening here, not just in St. Louis, but nationwide media that have said, okay, so Pastor Andre, what is this that's happening? But I'd love for you to talk to us now about what you see coming, I don't know, the next 12, 18 months. What do you see happening in the near future?
Great question. Somewhat loaded, I'll say that. So, as you heard me mention earlier, I talked about life land legacy. So in terms of lives, like literally today we got a phone call. We will present to the city's land bank tomorrow about a project that will potentially build a senior facility and offer affordable apartments to seniors a block away from here that we would build, 60 of them.
That's amazing.
And so if it's approved, that starts sometime next year.
Okay.
So that's within that 12 to 18 months. We just had architect here who designed this building last week, laying out phase 2 and potentially phase 3 of this building.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so here's what's happened. So good thing, as Pastor Greg mentioned, we said we had probably 2 to 3 years before people would really take us seriously about being in this space and working alongside of us. As of August, we were maxed. So we started to have the conversation because there's some other partners that I can't let names out now, which I hate, but that said, hey, we're interested and we believe we have things that could help people, which they do. We love to come into your space. As I mentioned you upstairs, one said, how about you, would you be willing to part with your conference room? I said, no, we can't part with the conference room. It took us 6 months to get the conference room furniture. We can't part with
Right. You got to sit in it at least once.
at least once, you know. It was on a truck somewhere. And so phase 2 looks at what does it look like if we build a wing from where if you came in and got something to eat. If we build a wing that way, like 7,000 square feet, we could create some more additional space for partners to be in. And then phase 3 looks at the purchase, which we're negotiating with the city of the building next door, that will allow us to really expand, particularly in the healthcare arena, as well as a few other nonprofits who are interested in office space, whose services complement what we do in terms of housing people and helping people become stable. So that's on the horizon. Spring, hopefully we will have broke ground on Heber Street Homes, which is building single-family affordable new homes, which has not happened in this immediate footprint. And when I say immediate, I'm talking less than a quarter of a mile. Hasn't happened in this immediate footprint in almost 60 years.
60 years. And now it's happening. Okay.
On a very historic street where a very
Right.
historic event happened when our city 70 plus years ago tried to desegregate the park. A riot broke out, it ended on this street. And so we get the opportunity to redeem
That's right. That's right.
space.
Yeah, I clap for that too.
So there's that. Then there's ever-growing relationships I can't talk about, like with the St. Louis Symphony. So in addition
You just did. You just talked about, no, I'm sorry. You mentioned him. I didn't know if you didn't want to mention him or not.
So after we have the grand opening of the bank branch, at 7 o'clock, the In Unison Chorus will host their first rehearsal right where you're sitting.
That's something. Isn't that
Because
something?
Pound Symphony Hall, you know, is going through renovation. And so Kevin Macbeth, the conductor, and a few others said, hey, we heard you got cool space. I said, yeah, we got cool space. And we started having conversation,
Yeah,
and
that's so good.
they'll be here. In addition to In Unison, the regular chorus will host rehearsal here a couple of times in November as well. And then in December, on a beautiful December 13th at 7 p.m., you are welcome to hear Quartango host a concert here, which they did last year, which is a quartet from St. Louis Symphony Orchestra.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
So that relationship is continuing to grow. And then Friday, we're hosting with our friends and partners Mercy Vaccination Clinic right here. Our partner Ashery Foundation. We have a couple of clinics coming up to help people with new IDs and birth certificates and all of that. So the next 12 to 18 months seem to be pretty full.
Yes, yes. Well, how about if we said, though, what are the hurdles? If these are great goals, these are great opportunities, but what are the What are the challenges that you see associated with some of this?
Yeah, great question. So 2 weeks ago, September 30th, we just hosted a gathering in here of philanthropy, bankers, equity partners to launch what's called The Village. And The Village is a community development plan that looks at development in the area for the next 20 years. It's got roughly a $438 million price tag to it. So when you start talking hurdles and you're in an area that's been disinvested for so long, of course that gives sticker shock, and then everybody goes, where does that money come from? And why should I give it given there are certain challenges? And so my answer is, let's not look at why should you give it, let's look at what happens if you don't. The opportunity cost loss. And so one of the slides we showed people 2 weeks ago was, if we don't do this, there, from an economic standpoint, is a chance missed of about $158 million generated wealth if we don't do it. If we don't do it, it costs a little bit over 1,100 jobs if we don't. So the hurdle is telling that story, but also backing that up with actual things coming to fruition that get people comfortable to go, okay, I see where this train is going, and I see how I fit into that train.
So for just a second, let's do what we did with Rick and with Eric, and go back and tell us. It's so obvious, but tell us why housing is absolutely essential. And if you want, share Pastor Randall's favorite horrible story.
Yeah. So without housing, a family or an individual really can't do anything. You can't address healthcare. You can't address education. You can't address food. You can't address finance. You can't address family or individual stabilization without it. Housing sits in the center, and then these other things complement it.
Okay.
So in the social services world, it's called social determinants. And housing is a key determinant. So what happens then, if you don't have housing, then my children are not stable, my job is not stable, my income is not stable, my health is not stable. That's what happens. And the personal story, so this had not even started yet, meaning Tabernacle Community Development Corporation. There was a family of 7 that lived 2 doors down from our church. Got to know them well, they would attend church sometime, and the couple came to me, husband and wife, and said they were so excited. They said, we're getting ready to buy the house we've been renting. I said, that's great. You know, it's 3 doors down, beautiful thing. We prayed, they walked away. I saw them literally 3 weeks later, and they were bawling. I said, what happened? Well, because the person they were renting from was not honest and had integrity, he sold the house from underneath them, took their deposit that they made towards what was supposed to be purchased, and the person who bought it did not honor the contract, and they eventually were on the street living out of their minivan for about 2.5 weeks. And so when that happened, we said, that can't happen again.
Right.
Not as long as we're here. We've got to find some way to address it. And so the why and why all this is necessary is for families like that who were honest, working, trusting people who lost and who children lost and who really it took them almost a year to recover before they actually got stable in terms of housing.
So what's it going to take for us to move forward into these next 12 to 18 months? We know why we're here tonight. What's it going to take?
Yeah, so part of planning community development is favorite word, pre-development stuff. That's the stuff where you pay people who are gifted like architects. That's where we get into negotiations of buying property. We try and buy everything within our footprint because if we control it, we can control what happens to it. So in that sense, we are a little bit of control freaks for a good reason. And then it also allows us to plan for then what goes there next. Line our projects, add additional staffing, grow our infrastructure and capacity. So, tonight, is part of helping us do that over the next 12 to 18 months, which for us, when we do the math, so here's the mathematician in me, that engineering degree, minor in math, by the way, too, so I'm good with numbers. We need to raise about $200K to keep things moving in the direction we want them to move in to help us check all those boxes.
Our goal, really, that we're putting out there is $200,000 will keep this rolling forward, everything that you were talking about.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So I think what we're going to do now is just really, we're done with our evening almost. I wanted you guys to get a chance to hear what's happening. I wanted you to hear a most powerful and beautiful story from Chikara. I wanted you to hear what it was like for these partners who are on the inside of this ecosystem. We needed to hear from the visionary leader, but the truth is, Andre, you and I have talked about this, we've prayed about this, we dream about this a long time, it's years now. And we are seeing real benefits. This is no longer theory. I cannot stress that enough. It's no longer theory. And so when we talk about ROIs and people, you say, well, what is going to be my return on investment? Well, we're seeing that. We're seeing it in stories of redemption and stories of hope and stories that are beginning to actually make a difference in a community. And it really does come back to hope. It comes back to momentum. It comes back to honestly, I don't know about y'all, but I happen to believe, and again, sorry, pastor alert, here it comes. I happen to believe that God's not finished with St. Louis. I happen to believe that God is still up to something. I happen to believe that we get to partner together and see something happen that we can, one more time, our children's children will look back and say, hey, there were people who did not give up, and there are people who partnered and who bridged gaps and who built bridges across divides, and something happened in St. Louis to the level that other people can't even quite explain it. I really think that can happen. I think it is happening, and I think the Hub is one of those epicenters where we're starting to see it happen. So I'm grateful for that, and we're thrilled to partner with you at our church, and we have been for years to be able to do this and to see what's happening. And there are other even partnerships out there that we can't talk about quite yet that are still, it's happening. And what I would say is the word hope is the perfect word. So some of y'all have heard me say this before, but hope's how we get through the day. Hope's like oxygen for our souls. Hope is how we breathe. Here we go. Hope is why little kids get up early on Christmas morning. Hope is why young girls go to the dance anyway. Hope is why little boys start shaving before they need to. Hope is what keeps some of us moving in tough times. Hope is what we try to whisper in the ear of a friend who is going through a dark, dark time. Hope is what we gather together in church communities and in business communities when you begin to see something happen. Hope is what echoes in those rooms, and I believe hope is why we are here tonight. So I'm going to ask you, if you would, to consider what it means for you. And those of you who are watching and you're joining us later, those of you who are watching us online right now, if you would like to talk with someone, you can enter into that chat room and talk with somebody right now. If you would like to talk with someone here, Andre and others would be happy to answer whatever questions you have. But we want to put a big dent. I'd like to say we'd like to get past that $200,000 number. We'd like to see what it would be like to keep things moving. Because you want to know one of the things that you used a word earlier that I think is so important. You said something about momentum. And St. Louis needs momentum. And this community needs momentum. And I love that we're seeing something happen. And I'm inviting you to consider, everybody has an envelope on their chair. There are other ways that we're going to put up on the screens for you to be able to give. If you need to go back and to talk to your family or kind of think this through, there will be other ways for you to do that. If you are watching this later, you can email us and we will get right back to you. But we want to consider here tonight, in this evening of hope, what's it going to be like for us to actually push this thing forward? So I want to thank you for being a part of this. I want to remind you, like I remind him all the time, you're not crazy. You're not crazy for dreaming. You're not crazy for caring. You're not crazy for thinking something could happen here. You're not crazy for thinking we're just getting started, because I believe we are. So I wanted to just thank you personally. I'm going to ask you, if you would, one more time to thank what I believe is one of the visionary leaders of this community, that when the story is written 20, 30 years from now, we don't even know how Andre Alexander's work and his life and his ministry and his dreams and his legacy, I don't think we have any idea the impact that it is going to have 20, 30, 50 years from now. But what we can do right now, besides considering how we're going to get involved financially, is we can thank him and his team one more time for this evening, and then I'm going to give it back to him.